Hello everybody, I'm Bede, aka the Terrible Australian of Super Podcasts, and welcome to the ninth edition of my 2013 MIFF video reviews. For this one, I am going to be talking about the films Fruitvale Station and Drinking Buddies. So let's get right into them. Now, as I've done in my past few videos, I've got my MIFF program, as you've seen multiple times before, so I can read out the synopsis of each of the films. So let's start with, once I find it, because I lost the page, with Fruitvale Station. Inspired by a senseless police shooting in Oakland in the first hours of 2009 and produced by Forrest Whitaker, Fruitvale Station was the toast of Sundance, winning both the Grand Jury Prize and the Audience Award. First-time writer-director Ryan Coogler starkly observes the pivotal moments in the too short life of a conflicted youth. Michael B. Jordan delivers a star-making turn as an ex-con father with the help of Octavia Spencer as his mother and Melanie Diaz as his feisty girlfriend. Grant Steph was caught on a cell phone video, and the tragedy sparked a nationwide commentary on race and violent protests about police brutality. Fruitvale Station reminds us that every martyr is also a man. Fruitvale Station, as you can tell from after I read the sort of the outline of the film, it is kind of a depressing film, but it's a very well made film. And I think it's a really strong directing debut for the film's writer-director Ryan Coogler, and it definitely shows that he has potential to have a very long career as a director. And for the film itself, I really like the film. I don't think it's as great as everyone has made it out to be, but for me, it's still a really strong and very powerful film that definitely had me invested into the character of Oscar, who in the film is played fantastically by Michael B. Jordan, who prior to this he's probably best known for a lot of people as for his role on the TV show The Wire, and I have to say he did a really great job, and this is a performance I can definitely see him that's going to make him a household name. It's sort of a star-making performance, and he's just terrific. Like I can't say enough of his performance. It's just that good. But everyone else in the cast is also really good as well. Octavia Spencer, who won an Oscar a few years ago for The Help, she delivers a performance that's a complete opposite of what she played for in The Help, and as Oscar's mother, and she was fantastic. It's a beautifully subtle performance. Like, she's not in the movie a lot, but she makes the most of her screen time, and she's just incredibly moving, and sort of especially in the third half of the movie, where I was actually very moved by her performance. I was actually sort of tearing up a couple of times because of how affecting her performance was. And also I want to shout out to Melanie Diaz, who was also great as Oscar's girlfriend. She was really great too, and I've seen her in a lot of films over the last couple of years, and this is definitely a standout performance as well, which I can definitely see that's going to get her a lot of attention. I'm not going to say it's perfect, but for what it is, it's still really damn good. There's one thing I sort of noticed about the film, and there's one thing about the movie that kind of slightly bugged me, and I wasn't sure what it was for a while during the film, but after I watched it, I sort of thought about it, and I realized that the film, it doesn't really follow a traditional three act structure. Like, for example, there's no sort of real sort of character arc in the film of Oscar. That doesn't necessarily mean that's a bad thing, but that's sort of the thing I sort of noticed, because to me the film is really sort of until we get sort of the third act. For at least the two first acts, it sort of like shows a day in the life of Oscar, like what he's going through. He's sort of his role as a father to his daughter, also as a boyfriend to his girlfriend, and also his relationship with his mother, and as well as his sort of trying to trying to get back into work after being fired a few weeks prior, and was also being tempted to sort of getting back into his criminal ways, and as well we have a bit of a flashback moment back to his time in prison, and so we get all these things, and it's not really like built up as a 3 act structure, but I understand what the film is trying to do. It sort of shows us that with his death, I guess spoilers for real life, sorry, that since his death sort of caused so much outrage in the United States, that this film just kind of shows, as the logline says, the man behind the martyr, and sort of who he is, that he was just a normal guy who had was facing real problems in his life, and that everyone can relate to, and then this terrible tragedy happens to him in the 3rd act, and the 3rd act is so brilliantly done. It's so fantastic, and you could say the film is basically kind of made in a way just as a build up to that event, but it's so effective and very powerful, and I'm not gonna lie, I was on the verge of tears by the end of it, and overall, it's, like I said, it's not a perfect film. It does have a couple little flaws, and it doesn't have the sort of traditional structure as a normal film would. But I actually think, in some ways, it kind of benefits the film as well in some regard. And but overall, I think it is a really good film that I do recommend everyone to check out. But it just has so many great performances, some of which I could definitely see getting Oscar nods at the end of the year, particularly Octavia Spencer, who has a really good chance, and it also shows really good. It's just also a really good debut for Ryan Coogler. For this one, he's going to have a really long career after this film. So overall, if I had to give my rating for this one, I'm going to give it a solid 4 stars. Has a couple, like I said, it has a couple of issues, but overall, I think it's a really powerful film that everyone should check out. Now, on to my next film, which is the indie comedy, I should say, Drinking Buddies. And this film is about Luke, Jake Johnson, and Kate, Olivia Wilde, are colleagues at a microbrewery, whose flirtation-ridden friendship oozes chemistry. With both in relationships, Luke with Jill, Anna Kendrick, and Kate with Chris, Ron Livingston, an overnight beach trip for the foursome becomes a tipping point. Now, this is the new film from writer-director Joe Swanberg, this is actually his 14th film in the last couple of years, so that's astonishing in its own way. And it's sort of along the lines of, I haven't seen his other films, but I know he was one of the major factors in the whole mumblecore movement that's been happening in films for the last couple of years. And this film, from the films that I have seen from that genre, this one's definitely in line with this one, but it's definitely, I guess, a bit more mainstream, but at the same time it still keeps its indie roots. There's sort of an authenticness to it. It doesn't feel artificial at all. Like, everything that happens in the film, from both a performance, character, story, and scene standpoint, feels organic and authentic and real. And also, as a comedy should, it's really funny. I really enjoyed this film. And also, the performances from everybody are great, and particularly Olivia Wilde, who I thought did a really great job in this film. I thought this is definitely going to be one of her best performances, and I just liked her character a lot. But everyone's good. Anna Kendrick also is great, but her and Ron Livingston, even though they're both good, they don't have as much screen time as both Olivia Wilde and Jake Johnson do. But they, like I said, they do make the most of their roles, and they're very effective. And Jake Johnson is great as well, and his chemistry with Olivia Wilde is great. Like, they have a really good chemistry with each other, and I sort of like that this film doesn't really fall back into cliches. Like, there's certain things with a film like this, especially with a comedy, that you can what kind of you have an idea of where the story is going to go and whatnot. But this film sort of doesn't go into directions you don't expect. It doesn't fall into cliches, and I just really enjoyed it a lot. It's a really funny, really well directed, well acted indie comedy, and I think this is actually my first film of Joe Swanberg's that I've seen, which he also directed. I've seen him in other films as an actor, like A Horrible Way to Die, and of course, most recently, another film I saw at MIFF this year, You're Next, which I briefly talked about. I thought he did a great job in that film, and this is interesting to see him, what he's like behind the camera. I know he's a lot of mix with a lot of film geeks and critics and whatnot when it comes to his films, but I think this is, but for me personally, my first introduction to him as a director. This one I actually really like. So it's a good film, and I look forward to see what else he has up his sleeve in the future, and also it will give me a chance to look back on the rest of the films in his filmography as well. I don't think it's a great film. I think it's a really good film. Like, I do think one major criticism I do have about the film, and this will be a very minor spoiler, but I do think the film's a bit. I think the film is a bit anticlimactic. It's like sort of gets to a point where I wanted to see where it went, and then all of a sudden, oh yeah, end credits, and I wanted to see where the rest of the story would go. I guess in a way it makes sense that it would stop at this particular point, but I had such a great time with the film, and as well as really enjoying these characters, that I wanted to see more of it, and it sort of kind of just ends really, and that's sort of really my major criticism with it. But if I had to rate this film, it's a 3.5. It would have been higher if it wasn't for that ending, but for what it is, I think 3.5 is a good rating for this film. But I do suggest everyone to check it out. It's a really good film, and I think a lot of people will enjoy it. That's the end of my 9th edition of my 2013 MIFF video reviews. Keep a lookout very soon for my 10th edition, in which I'll be reviewing the films Lovelace and the highly anticipated new Aussie film Tim Winton's The Turning. So keep a lookout for that one, and I'll see you all later. See you, everyone.